إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا النبي الأمي سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه ومن اهتدى بهدي إلى يوم الدين. تركنا على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. ثم أوصيكم ونفسي العاصية بتقوى الله كما أمر الله عز وجل في كتابه العزيز حيث يقول: يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم إن زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم يوم ترونها تذهل كل مرضعة عما أرضعت وتضع كل ذات حمل حملها وترى الناس سكارى وما هم بسكارى ولكن عذاب الله شديد. ثم أما بعد. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord, sustainer of the universe. We beseech and implore Him to forgive our missteps and our transgressions and to offer His most salient blessings and salutations upon His last and final Prophet, the one who is sent as a mercy to all of the created world, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and upon his kin, his companions, and all those who follow his guidance to the last day. He has left for us a clear, pristine path. Its day is as its night in its clarity, and all those who waver from it will find nothing but misery and destruction. وبعد. So one of the things that is emblematic of the message and the teachings of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that it's a course and a way for humanity, and it endears us and entreats us to be the best human beings we could possibly be. And it also recognizes and acknowledges that the human being also has the potential and the capacity to be something less than human, where we define humanity as all that is in accordance with the God-given faculties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has endowed us with. Faculties of hearing, of speech, of sight, of knowledge, of literacy, compassion, mercy. These are all things that define humanity. And perhaps all of those things can be summarized in one word: beauty. Everything that the believer does, everything that comes out of his or her mouth, everything that they put their trust into, and everything that they long for and aspire to should be beautiful. And in one of the hadith that's narrated in Sahih Muslim, that the Prophet ﷺ said about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal, that Allah is beautiful and that He loves beauty. And this word jamal in Arabic that we often associate with things that are amenable to us, things that we like. So we can recognize a beautiful picture, we could recognize a beautiful person physically, we could recognize a beautiful car, motorcycle, airplane. We inherently within us, we have the ability to recognize that which is beautiful. And we have an affinity. We are drawn to those things that are beautiful. No one is drawn to ugliness. No one is drawn to ugliness. No one loves ugliness. No one loves evil. No one loves even the physically ugly. Everyone loves beauty. And those who may find themselves drawn to ugliness, it's not because they love the ugly in it, but it's a reflection on themselves, that they have lost somewhat of their capacity, what is described as a basira, right? The inner insight, the intuitive insight to see things as they are. And that's one of the most important things about the believer. اتقوا فراسة المؤمن فإنه ينظر بنور الله. Be wary of the firasa, the spiritual intuition of the believer, because they see by the light of God. Right? We see by the light of God if we're true believers. And so beauty then comes to define everything that we should be drawn to. If we have a sound heart, if we have sound faculties. That's why the Sharia does not take people into account who don't have sound faculties. If you're not of sound mind, you're not taken into account for what you do, because you don't have the ability to recognize that which is good from that which is bad, that which is going to have good consequences and ramification, and that which is not. But yet, the prophetic message also came to dispel some misconceptions that we may have. So it's a normal human inclination to think that at times we have to dispense with beauty when the situation arises, when there's a need, when there is dhulm, when there is oppression, when there is corruption, when we have to defy evil. This is a time now, perhaps, and I call it a misconception, I'll demonstrate to you why in a second, that we have to dispense with this notion of beauty. This person is hurting you, these people are hurting us, these people are doing despicable things, then we have to repel that by any means necessary. We have to make sure that no longer happens, that has to cease and stop, and they have to completely desist. And we take it upon ourselves, right? If we can't do it physically, then at least by our tongue, and if we can't do it by our tongue, then we hate it in our heart, as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ mentions, right? مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ وَمَنْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَيَكْرَهُ فِي الْقَلْبِ وَهَذَا أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. And you see something that is reprehensible, change it with your hand. If you're not able to do so, then with your tongue, say something about it. And if you're not able to do that, then at least hate it in your heart. وَهَذَا أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ, and that's the weakest of the iman. And this is one of the most oft-quoted hadith, probably in the last 20 or 30 years, in khutb, all over the world. Why? Because we have this sense of mazlumiyya. We have the sense that we have been wronged, that we have been oppressed, and that we need to right the wrongs, that we even may have an inkling of a sense of retribution. Muslims collectively I'm speaking about now. But as I said, the prophetic message comes also to dispel some normal human inclinations, to dispel those misconceptions that can arise out of that. And one of those things, as I mentioned, is this idea we have to dispense with beauty. We have to dispense with what we think to be good in order to repel that which is bad. And nothing could be further from the truth. And I'm only going to give you 3 examples to demonstrate that. We find this word Jamal or Jamil in the Qur'an mentioned 3 or 4 times. And every time it's mentioned, it is mentioned with a difficult situation. In a situation where you would think it's not a time to say beauty. Right? When news came to our Prophet Yaqoub, alayhi salam, right? And some of the sons or the brothers of Yusuf came, bidamin kadhib, right? They said that Yusuf fell in the well, or Yusuf was eaten by the wolf. And then they brought a shirt with not his blood, but some other animal's blood or fake blood or whatever it might have been. And they bring it to him, right? What did he say to him? بَلْ سَوَّرَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. It's not what you have appeared to say. Something, sawalat, right? Something overcame you of your lower ego, your lower selves. Difficult. Can you imagine the loss of a son by the hand of some of your other sons? Can you imagine such a situation? Your own son, gone. By whom? By your other sons. What a trial, what a tribulation. Not quite a time to think about beauty and nice and goodness and those type of things. It's difficult. What did Sayyidina Yaqoub say the very next 2 words? فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. عَسَى اللَّهُ أَن يَأْتِينِي بِهِ جَمِيعًا. صَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. I will have a beautiful sabr, a beautiful forbearance. A beautiful forbearance. Not just any forbearance. Not just, okay, let me be patient and sit through this. No, it's going to be a beautiful one. He took that as an opportunity to fulfill not only his mission as a prophet and as a messenger, but as the epitome of what the beautiful human being is. And when the beautiful human being, when they are accosted and encountered with very difficult situations, they don't lose their humanity. It's not an excuse at that point to dehumanize either yourself or others. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. Let me have this beautiful patience. Beautiful patience. I'll give you another example. I said 3. The second example. Many of the Quraysh who were opposing the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ opposed him in the most difficult of ways. Not just by speech, not just by word, but even it came to physical confrontation on many accounts. And these also were the relatives and former friends, even clansmen, tribesmen of the same tribe of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Because we speak about Quraysh as if they're like some foreign tribe. Prophet ﷺ was from Quraysh. كان قرشيا. Right? He was from the sub-tribe of Banu Hashim, but nevertheless, he's from the same tribe of Abu Sufyan and Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab, right? And Umayyah, all of these people, he was from the same tribe as them. So they were kinsmen to him. They weren't like these foreigners that he can otherize so easily. And they said very despicable and difficult things to him. So what did the Qur'an exhort the Prophet ﷺ to say to them? What did it tell him to do about the things they would say? فَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا يَقُولُونَ وَاهْجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. وَاهْجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. Be patient, forbearant in the things that they say. وَاهْجُرْهُمْ. وَالْهَجْرُ التَّرْكُ. It literally says abandon them, leave them. Right? And when you think about abandoning somebody or leaving them or forsaking them to some sense, you think it's not acrimonious, it's difficult. It's like, okay, it's not as easy as clicking unfriend on Facebook when it's in real life. Right? It's going to be some hard feelings and things like that. But here the Qur'an is telling the Prophet ﷺ how should he do it? وَهَجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. When you do it in a beautiful way. In a beautiful way. So another account, how is it that we can leave someone, forsake them, abandon them, or at least stay away from them in a beautiful way? That's the second instance. And I'll give you one more instance, the third one, also dealing with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. There came a time when the Prophet ﷺ had a difficult situation with some of his wives, or all of them actually. And he lived the life of chosen austerity. What we call al-faqr al-ikhtiyari, walaysa al-ittirari. Right? Faqr al-ikhtiyari means he chose to live that way. He chose to take the lowest common denominator from dunya, and that's all that he needed. Because had he chosen, had he desired, he could have had as much as dunya as he wanted. They would have given it to him freely. He did not desire it. Not only did not desire it, he also asked that sacrifice of his family, of his wives. But he understood also it is a sacrifice. It's not something they have to do. So in Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs the Prophet ﷺ how to go about doing it. Right? Say to your wives, إن كنتن تريدن الحياة الدنيا وزينتها فتعالين نمتعكن ونسرحكن سراحا جميلا. Say to them, if you want the beauty of this life, zina, right? Something of this life, hayat dunya, nice clothes, nice house, all those things all the other wives might want, fata'aling, no problem, right? And there'll be tamtiya. In other words, give them what they desire. وَصَرَّحْكُنَّ صَرَاحًا جَمِيلًا. But if this is what they want, that is not compatible with what the Prophet ﷺ in his mission. Because he is an exemplar, not just for his generation, not just for the generation after him, but for all of humanity. And the rest of humanity to the day of judgment that lives after him. He's that exemplar. And so his life had to be a life that was not about dunya. That it was not about partaking in just fleeting delights at any cost. So were they willing to make that sacrifice? The Qur'an is telling them, if you are, stay with the Prophet. If you are not, then he will separate from you a beautiful separation. Sarahan jamila. Again, this word beauty. Right? We think about divorce, we think about families breaking up, and it seems it's like, that's acrimonious, that's not a nice thing. You know, how many people divorce amicably? It's always hard feelings, right? It's always something that's not right. But here, again, dispelling the misconception that even in that difficult situation, that it would be devoid of beauty, the Qur'an clearly instructs us that it's not, that there's still beauty there. So if there's beauty in the difficult situations, then what about the easy situations? Right? What about when we feel like we're so blessed because we have so much and so many people are interested in what we have to say, or so many people like us, right? What then? Shouldn't that be more deserving of beautiful action and beautiful words and beautiful demeanor and beautiful akhlaq and character? Or do we take it as opportunity to be arrogant and haughty and spread rancor amongst others because of what we think we're entitled to or what we deserve? So none of these fulfill that mission, that meaning of beauty. And in the second khutbah, I'm going to talk about some of the manifestations in the 3 verses that I talked about, and the 3 instances I talked about in the Qur'an, of how this beauty, how we can reach that beauty when we face these difficult questions. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر لكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه فإن التائب من الذنب كمن لا ذنب له. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلوات وتم التسليمات على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So Sayyidina Yaqoub, at the loss of his son, or the perceived loss of his son, he said, Sabrun Jameel. What is this beautiful forbearance? What is this beautiful patience? One of the things that the ulama say about forbearance in particular, or sabr, they look at it as one of those posts on your spiritual journey that you will not realize any other type of openings, epiphanies, if you will, unless you can have tahaqquq, you can have realization of this meaning of forbearance. And this meaning of forbearance is predicated on a few things. And if you don't have those things, it will be very difficult for you to be forbearant and to show patience. Number one, I would say, or close to the top of the list, is something that they say, they call it Adam al-i'tirad ala Allah. Having no objection to Allah and His divine decrees. This is at the top of it. The reason that patience is painful, right? Because when we say, oh, brother, be patient, sister, be patient. Oh, you got a C on your economics exam. Yeah, next time, be patient. We try to, assuage and offer words of kindness because it's painful. Fi alam. But why is there pain to begin with? There is pain because there were certain expectations that you had that were not met. That's painful. But what if you didn't have expectations? What if you just did because you did, and you do because you do, and there are no expectations after that? Logically speaking, then you would never feel pain because you don't have an expectation of something to happen. So you need to get through what I would call the sabr shukr barrier, right? Between patience, forbearance, and then gratitude, there's a fine line. And it's predicated on what I just mentioned. Do you have an objection to what's happening to you? If you do, that's really an objection to God and what He has decided and decreed for you. If you don't have an objection, then not only may you be forbearant in it, you may even be grateful, thankful. Why? Because you have to put it all with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأُفَوِّدُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. And I put complete agency. Subhanallah, the ayah is like as if you need to say that for it to be true. It's already mufawwad. There is already complete agency with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But do you acknowledge it or not? Right? It's like the other verses that talk about everyone will come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment, abda. Everyone will come as a slave. Whether you like it or you don't like it, whether you recognize it during your earthly life or you didn't recognize it, the end result will be one. That's how you're going to come. So you can choose to be so, and if you choose so, you are elevated, you are raised. And then abd, the word slave for you, is an honorific. It's a badge of honor at that point because you chose it. Or you don't choose it. And you come in chains and you get dragged there. And then abd, the word slave for you, is not an honorific. You're debased by it. Because as the Prophet ﷺ reminded us in some of the hadith, you are a slave to that which you love. So if you love dunya, if you love praise, if you love prestige, if you love status, if you love delights, and that's all that you love, then you'll be a slave to that. But if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you love His Prophet ﷺ, then you'll be a slave to receiving their pleasure, which is two different things completely. So sabr, jameel, means number one, recognize that this situation that you're in now, it's totally from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there was nothing you could have done really to avoid it. And so it's a test for you at this point. Was Sayyidina Yaqoub a bad man? He's a prophet. Can we say that what happened to him was a punishment to him? Abadan. That's mushkil. That's very problematic if you believe that. So can we say the things that happen to us are punishments? Is Allah actually punishing us in this life? Or is He leading us to something much better in the next? Did the Prophet ﷺ receive all of the trials and tribulations of his life? Were they punishments? Was Allah punishing His Prophet? And Allah says that He loves His Prophet. How can that be? And Allah says about His Prophet, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. And Allah will give you and you will be pleased. Allah is going to please the Prophet. There's no other person mentioned in the Qur'an that He talks about like that. Allah will please the Prophet. That's why some of them said this is the most hopeful verse in the Qur'an. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ would be displeased for any of us to enter into hellfire, any of his ummah. And his ummah is not just me and you and all those who say La ilaha illallah in this room. His ummah is the 7.5 billion people outside and the 7 billion who lived before that. That's his ummah. Anyone who lived after the Prophet ﷺ, they are all from his ummah. So he would be displeased that even a single one of us would enter into hellfire. وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. Allah will please the Prophet. So this sabr jameel, this beautiful patience, means that put Allah and His Prophet before you. And recognize that what you're going through, many, many before you have walked that same path, including our beloved Prophet ﷺ. So don't think of it as a punishment or as retribution from Allah. Allah is so much bigger than that. He's so much more merciful, right? مَا غَرَّكَ بِرَبِّكَ الْكَرِيمِ. What has deluded you except your generous Lord? This is the one that's deluded, recognizes his Lord is generous. So what about the ones who don't even see that He's generous? How much more deluded are they? So this sabr jameel, this beautiful patience, this beautiful forbearance has to be predicated on that idea to begin with. What about this hajr al-jameel? وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا يَقُولُونَ وَاهْجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. Be patient in what they say to you and leave them, stay away from them, a type of hajr jameel. And you might say to yourself, how do you abandon someone? How do you forsake someone? How do you leave them alone and kind of sort of end the relationship to some degree, but yet it's beautiful? And I thought about this a little bit. And one of the things that the way the Qur'an describes adversity between Muslims and non-Muslims is that it mentions words that would give you an idea that it's something that is what we call tariq and not asli. It's not a foundational thing. It's not something where it has to be that way. Amr tariq. In other words, it's something that came about and can just as easily go away. It's temporary, right? It says about adawa baynakum wa baynahum, right? This enmity between you and them, not your enemies, but there's enmity between you two. That's a different way of saying it. Enmity between two people can go away. And even the Qur'an tells us that if you spread peace, if you spread sabr between people, that the furthest adversary away from you, right? Al-khasm, the enemy, what seems to be like an enemy, كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ, as if he is the closest, right? إِدْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. How so? idfa billati hiya ahsan. Repel with that which is better. And as I said, the Quran dispels misconceptions. This word idfa in Arabic means to repel, to push away. Usually when we think repel, again we think force, aggression, right? Repel them. That's not what the Quran said. idfa billati hiya ahsan. فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. Repel with that which is more beautiful. That's what hasad means. بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, with the thing that is more beautiful, that is greater, that is good. فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ. Then you will find that between the two of you there may be some adawa, in enmity, كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. As if he is the closest confidant, the closest friend you ever had. Just like that. Just like that. And we have so many examples of this in our seerah. Umar ibn al-Khattab goes that night, the would-be assassin of the Prophet ﷺ. The assassin, that's what he was going to be. That was going to be his legacy. He comes out and he leaves, and we say Umar ibn al-Khattab, al-Faruq, radiyallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ says about him, لو كان نبيا بعدي لكان عمر. He says if there were to be a prophet, but there's no prophet after him. But if there were to be one, it would have been Umar. The would-be assassin. And he is buried in the same hujrah, the same room, the same sacred room as our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. You show me anywhere else in history, anywhere else, any civilization, where the would-be assassin of the leader is buried next to him and became one of his closest confidants and friends, and married his daughter. Did the Prophet ﷺ not marry the daughter of Umar, Sayyidina Hafsa? Radiallahu anha, he did. Where else do you find that? This is the legacy of the deen. It's not about spreading enmity. It's not about spreading rancor. It's not about us getting retribution. It's not about us securing our rights as some special interest group. It's about spreading love and peace and rahmah and mercy and helping people realize their human potential. That's what this deen is about. It's so much bigger than what we think it is. Don't make it narrow, right? Don't make it just small. It's so big. It's so encompassing. So live the encompassing nature of the deen, right? And we're trying to show one of those meanings today. Sabr jameel, al-hajr jameel, right? Even when you have to do something that's difficult, do it in the beautiful way. If you have to do divorce and there's no other way, do it in a beautiful way. The Quran says, وَمَتِّعْكُنْ. This tamti' means that you give them a parting gift, that you treat them right, that you don't speak about them in an evil way. Right? Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar divorced one of his wives. And before he divorced her, he was having issues. So someone came and asked him, what's going on with you and your wife? He said, that's my wife. I don't talk about her to anybody. It's not your business. So then he divorces her. So same person, another person comes to him and asks him, what happened with, your wife? She's not your wife anymore. He said, she is ajnabiyya. Right? She is not my wife anymore, and it's not halal for me to speak about another woman. So why are you asking me that question? Still the respect, right? You respect them when you get along, and you still show that modicum of respect, even if you don't get along. This is what al-hajr al-jameel is. Recognize it may be temporary, right? Or with sarah al-jameel, even if you have to divorce, do in an amicable way. Do not go beyond bounds. Do not make the children that were between you hate one another or hate one of the parents. Right? Because you just want to be vindictive and you want to find retribution to that spouse who you think hurt you, which they may well have. They very well have. But should it be at the expense of your children? Should your children have to suffer? They are going to suffer enough from the divorce to begin with. Should they suffer more now because each one of the husband and the ex-husband and ex-wife are trying to spread that so they can curry favor with their kids? I guarantee you it will backfire. And so even when we talk about divorce, there's adab, there's etiquettes, there's courtesies involved. There are waiting periods involved. If you're going to do, just on a side note, if you're going to do a Sunni divorce, the way it's supposed to be done, then I would say at a minimum, from the time that you decide, or if the both of you decide that you want to divorce or that's an option, it should not be less than 1 year until you think they're actually going to go through with it. Because the Qur'an talks about steps, right? First there's maw'idha, there's admonition, then there's islah al-bayn, then you bring hakaman min ahliha wa hakaman min ahli, someone from his side, someone from her side, they talk about it, right? And then if you still decide to do it, then there is a iddah, there's a waiting period. She should stay in the house, according to most of the ulama, where there's a chance to reconcile and istirja, she comes back. All of that stuff shouldn't be a minimum less than a year. So you're sitting in your house, you think it's hajran jamila or sarahan jamila, and you say in one word 3 divorces, and you're done? You just throw away that? And Allah calls it mithaqan ghalidha. He calls it a heavy, ghalidh, right? Look at the way the word sounds, ghalidh. Difficult, heavy, right? Contract, relationship between the two of you. It's not thrown away like that. It's not disposable. You don't just throw it away because you're no longer into it, because you're not feeling it. You're not that into her anymore. You're not that into him anymore. Those are not reasons for divorce. Look at the Qur'an. Read the words of the Qur'an. Penetrate the deeper meanings. See how the Sahaba lived, right? See how the Prophet ﷺ lived these meanings. How he taught them. How he left them as a legacy for his companions and for us. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم اجرنا من النار ومن خزي النار ومن عمل يقرب إلى النار وقنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار واغفر تعالى عما تعلم إنك أنت العزيز الأكرم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you to forgive our sins and our trespasses and our mistakes, and to lift the trials and tribulations upon all our brethren wherever they may be, our brothers in Syria, in Aleppo and Syria and in Kashmir and Afghanistan and in Pakistan and in Burma and in Central Africa and in all of the places where many of our brothers and sisters are going trials and tribulations. We ask you to remove all these trials and tribulations. It has been a long time. Many of them have afflicted. Allah, we know that your benevolence is greater than we can ever imagine. So we are hopeful that these things will go away and that you will shine your light of mercy upon all of us collectively and individually. And we ask you as a final request that you bequeath us the great and most fortunate blessing that we say upon our last breath, La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. إن الله أمركم بأمر عميم بدأ بنفسه وثنى بالآية القدسي حيث يقول إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته وأقم الصلاة.